My name is Yascha Mounk. I'm a professor of a practice of international affairs at Johns Hopkins University, the host of a Good Fight podcast, and the founder of Persuasion. My latest book is called The Identity Trap. In the book, I try to explain a new set of ideas about race and gender and sexual orientation that has become very influential over the course of the past decade. A set of ideas sometimes called woke, though I prefer the term of the identity synthesis. Now, in one of the chapters of this book, I try to puzzle through the notion of cultural appropriation, the idea that has become very popular over the course of the last years, that we should be really concerned, really worried when members of more dominant groups are influenced in some kind of way by the cultures of minority groups. This has started to influence our cultural life in deep ways. Authors are warned against having protagonists that stem from different ethnic groups. Chefs have been boycotted for cooking the cuisine of other cultures. It has become a really central part of our cultural discourse. Here is why I think that concerns about cultural appropriation are misplaced, why this term ultimately does more damage than it gives us benefit in understanding the world. The first part of the argument is that some of the things that we call by the name of cultural appropriation might be bad, but that the term cultural appropriation misleads us about what is bad about those examples. So, for example, it was of course unjust and unfair that some black musicians in the 1950s, 1960s weren't able to have big careers, and white musicians stole their music and had big careers on the back of that. But what was unjust about that situation was not that there was white jazz saxophonists, it was that there was extreme forms of discrimination against these black musicians, that they were not able to perform in many concert venues, to travel freely across the American South, to be played on certain radio stations, to sign contracts with big record labels. This points us to a second problem with the notion of cultural appropriation, because it points us in the wrong direction for how to fix injustices. The way to fix that injustices would not have been and was not to stop white people from performing jazz or other musical styles that weren't originally quote-unquote white. It was to make sure that we overcame the forms of extreme discrimination and injustice that stopped those black musicians from having big careers. All of this matters because our ability to influence each other is a huge part of how we have historically built culture. Virtually nothing in the United States today, from the language we speak, to the letters we use, to the numerals we use, to the technology we utilize in order to communicate, has origins just in one culture. Nearly always, when you dig down a little bit into the things that are supposedly being culturally appropriated, they themselves are a product of cultural appropriation. And so I want to insist that the way in which we influence each other today in a city like New York or Los Angeles or Chicago is not something we should be worried about in contemporary America. It's one of the things we should celebrate, we should be proud of in the contemporary United States.